So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Soundbites with RokoM, Michelle, and our very special guest, Pam Ramirez. Pam and Roko and I all work together at Sutter Health. And Pam now, she's a coach like Roko and I do for our side jobs or the other jobs. And but Pam is doing it full time, and it's Incline Coaching, right?
Right.
So self-employed, and so she does that through Incline Coaching. So super excited. The topic that we selected this week is on the power of courage. And so I want to kick us off with a quote, and then we'll unpack it a little bit, and we'll all talk about stuff. So courage is the power to let go of the familiar. And so when I think of this, I think about the time that literally I left my job at Sutter Health and stepped into the unknown. And so while it may seem like it was a no big deal thing to some people, that there was a lot of soul searching and a lot of just OS moments and second guessing myself. But I look back on that and stronger and have more clarity as a result of doing that. So that's when I listen to that quote and think about the power of courage. For me, in that quote, that's what that means. So Pam, what stands out for you? What's on your mind about the power of courage?
Yeah, I mean, since I experienced the same thing as you, leaving the organization after 22 years, and being in a nice little cocoon where you had your every 2 weeks checks and your benefits, and it was pretty predictable. And even though my role might have changed a few times during those 22 years, but for the most part, everything was pretty solid. And then making that decision to leave at the end of 2020 during a global pandemic and pursue my coaching career. And it was like, that was a huge leap of faith. And, and there's something that resonated with me. I heard courage is not the absence of fear. I was scared shitless.
Yeah.
But, I could see the writing on the wall, and I knew I had to shift gears and do something different. And I did have that coaching background and as an internal coach for an organization and training. And I just did it. Fast forward, here we are, 2020.
I know, isn't that funny? It's 2 years later.
Oh my gosh!
Because I have to wonder, Roko, I'm sure you've got questions for Pam, but I do too. So I'm gonna let you step into the conversation before I ask mine.
Well, since we're talking about courage, and you talked about this huge change that you had going from a steady career, 22 years, to something completely brand new, but something you had invested in and had a passion for. So what were some of the things that helped you be courageous or be vulnerable about stepping into that new line of work and that new way of working too, because you're basically it's your own business.
Yeah. Well, I think I was well prepared in my role at Sutter for this, and as far as the training and education and the encouragement. And by the way, encourage has the word courage in it.
It does. I never even thought about that.
Yeah. So I was also encouraged by others. We encourage people, but they also encourage us. And I felt there was some pivotal folks that within that organization and outside of the organization that encouraged me to just do what my heart led me to do.
Yeah. That's interesting, because when I think about that, because one of the questions that came to mind for me is if you think about people listening or leaders, right, stepping into things that aren't familiar, and I've done it a number of times in my career, that's like, what have I got myself into? You tapped into people. So there was some community, some network, right, that you look to for them to go, follow your heart, Pam. You basically have all it takes to succeed. I'm assuming something along those lines. And so that's where my brain went, is like, so what do you do from scared shitless to stepping in and actually following through with that. And so what are some of those critical things to where you can rally courage, where it's not the absence of fear, but it's like, I have a mindset that I'm going to see this through.
Yes. So there's a lot of different forms of courage, you know, and in my research, there's like, not only encouragement, but there's physical courage and emotional courage, which is following your heart, obviously, intellectual courage. And I think for me, because I'm high on the spectrum of wanting to learn and develop, I mean, that's one of my, my strengths, finder strengths, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that kind of was motivating me as well. It was like, ooh, these are, you know, some new things to learn and to do, and letting go of the familiar and challenging some of my old assumptions, and, you know, based on the learnings and the insights that I had from other people and within myself. And so I'm self-motivated in a lot of ways. And that was a huge factor in my doing this whole thing and moving on.
Yeah, I think that mindset is key. Having that mindset of, you know, being willing to, hey, it may not work out, but I'm going to try anyways. I'm going to learn something along the way. I know early on in my career, I was fortunate enough to have a boss who helped me to see that, you know, change is inevitable, and you're always going to be tested with things that you may not know. And you're going to have to, you know, lean into them and have the courage to step into them. But what he said was, as long as you're not going to die, or somebody's not going to die because of this change that you're doing, give yourself grace to fail. And by doing that, it helped me create a mindset of, you know, having the courage. It gave me the courage to try things that I would have normally like, oh no, it's, you know, it's too uncertain. I don't want to put myself in that position. But it really did give me that courage to try things that I would have never done before, because what's the worst that could happen? Fall on my face, I pick myself up and either try it again or pivot and say, no, I won't be doing that again. I'll try something else.
I'm going to read another quote, and then I'm going to share a thought. Courage is the decision to take a risk without proof you will succeed. And so that speaks to all the, you know, there's no guarantees. There's not even guarantees when there's guarantees. So, you know, I mean, that's the illusion of a guarantee, right? If someone says, oh, it's going to work out great. Okay. Yeah. Famous last words. But I think the thing is, when we talk about the power of courage, right, is that outside of our comfort zone is where we're growing and where we're thriving and we're doing all that stuff. And so I personally don't know anyone that their comfort zone sits inside of fear, right? And so it's that place that the courage is, you're stepping outside that fear base, that comfort zone place, and risking something. And I think that's where the payoff happens, because, and I remember I had a conversation with Deidre Schneider one time when there were a lot of unknowns in my career as I went from thing to thing to thing, right? And one thing that she told me, she said, Michelle, the stuff that you've learned, no one can ever take that from you. And so if nothing else, stepping into things that you've never done before, you will have a skill set that you didn't previously have, that's going to serve you to step into that next level that you step into. And I think that's the power of it, because that's where we learn and grow.
So true. Wise words from her.
Well, it's Deidre. So
it's Deidre, I know.
And for all those people out there that are listening who don't know Deidre.
Deidre was one of the learning and development team members, facilitators that, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be in the room with her so she could give me feedback and grow and develop, because that at that time was a scary place for me to be. And I hadn't done it with, oh, here's an agenda and here's the timing and here's the curriculum. Oh, by the way, it's all day with people in the room and you're the one. And I'm like, what? So, and I remember one time, talk about courage, right? There was one time, so how the training was set up, because I was on the process improvement team. So I was co-facilitating with a facilitator who actually did that for a living. And so it was a partnership on these all-day engagements, right? And learning and delivery would do the activities, and then the improvement people would actually do the technical side. So I had my role. There was somebody new that was on the improvement team that was going to be learning my role. And Deidre was doing the activities and basically running the whole freaking show. So I drive, I get there in the morning, and she's like, so I'm super sick and I'm going to need to leave. What? She goes, but don't worry, you got this. I said, I don't got this. She said, but you've been teaching this class for a while. Yeah, my part, not your part. So literally she downloaded, you know, for me, the activities, the nuances behind stuff. And she goes, you got this, you're good. And I was scared to death. I'm like, so I'm training someone new. I've been through this class a couple of times, never did her role, right, of actually leading activities. And so anybody out there that's done that knows there's a nuance to leading activities with groups of people and the debrief and everything. I could just sit back on that part before. So yes, it took courage to step in front of the room and not go, I've never done this before, be patient with me. I'm like, okay, you got this. And so just step in and be okay. And but yeah, it brought me back to that, the Deidre moment that she just,
Deidre moment.
You've got this. You've got this. So anyway, but yeah, so Roko, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, so Pam, now that you've had, you know, you shared with us that one life-changing event that you had to have courage to step into, what would be some advice that you would give to others around courage?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is just that we make things out to be more difficult than they really are, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, being a coach, obviously, we help people navigate through life changes and obstacles and whatnot, because they have a lot of blind spots. We all have blind spots. And so really acknowledging that, and I think being coached helps with that as well. Mm-hmm. And so I was coached by two different people throughout my process. So I think, you know, that is where the encouragement comes in.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it. It's a good call out on all that stuff when you look back, because it's like when we get to this place where we're emotionally charged or emotions are running rampant and fear will hijack us, we're not able to critically think in those moments. So I think, to your point, if when we're in those points that fear is there about decisions, panic, whatever it may be, do we stay in the status quo? And oh, by the way, I read something the other day that said status quo was basically Italian for this mess we're in. And I'm like, really?
I like that.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought, you don't want to stay in the status quo then, if it's the mess we're in. But if you think about that, a lot of us may miss the opportunity to learn and grow and do something else, or to reach our full potential. Mm-hmm. If we don't have someone helping us think through the options and the opportunities, and to your point, Pam, encourage us to step into something that isn't like, you know, it's like the face your fears that we did before, you know, it's like the rappelling down into the cavern. Had someone not been there encouraging me, I never would have gone down that freaking road into that hole.
Yeah. And you know, what I heard Pam say too is resources. So think about what resources are available for you as you go through something that, you know, can help you have the courage and help encourage you through that change or through that decision point that you're having to go through.
Well, and I wonder too, it's like stepping in. So when you left, it was to step into a role that you hadn't done full time, right? You'd been studying, practicing to be a coach, but hadn't done that role full time, Pam. And I think about Roko, maybe roles that you stepped in. I look at roles that I've stepped in that were, which should happen, that were beyond where my current skill set was. I may dip a toe in the water about those skills or whatever, but not 100% firing on all cylinders, stepping into another role. And I think that's the power of courage, is that if we didn't have the courage, we wouldn't step into those roles. So it's not just about, to your point, physical stuff or overcoming, going into a dark house when there's no lights on. It takes courage, whatever that may be. But when you think about for our careers, and I think you said it, Pam, stepping into that place to where we could fail. And Roko, you did too. It's just like, but there's so much upside in that.
Yeah, and there's also something called disciplined courage, because there's many forms of courage. I mentioned that before, and you might know that as well.
No, I don't have disciplined courage.
Disciplined courage is really remaining steadfast, strategic, and deliberate in the face of inevitable setback and failures.
Oh, I like that.
Wow. Yes.
And so that's another form of courage.
Yeah. So what visual came to mind for you, Roko, when she said that?
It's good, continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Because it's structured and there's rigor around it. So I, immediately I'm like, oh, that's continuous improvement, my life, but
No, that was funny, because when you said that, I hadn't thought about it that way, but that does take courage to stay the course if things aren't are less than ideal right now. Yeah. Or you've got this crazy milestone that you thought you were going to hit by a certain time, and it's like the whole plan, do, abandon, and play.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Because we always in our A3 thinking, we talk about people go plan, do, abandon, but they don't go through the whole cycle and go through it many times. Oh, you found the solution and you think you're one and done, but it actually takes multiple iterations, multiple PDSA cycles before you can say, yes, this is stable. This is the thing that becomes the new standard.
Well, and the other thing, it's like there's plenty of times with organizations that there is a cascaded down deadline for something, right? And you're handed this as a leader, and you're going, there's no way with timelines, targets, resources that we're going to hit this on that time. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so it takes courage to speak up. Oh, this is going to go to my other quote.
Yeah, but before you go there, let me say one other thing. So the other word that stood out to me that Pam, and I really love it, is deliberate. And Michelle and I, almost in every single podcast that we've done, we talk about intentionality. And to me, that word deliberate is about the intentionality. The same thing with strategic. To me, it's the same thing. You're being very focused on what you're doing. You're being intentional about what you're doing. So I love that.
I agree. Roko does.
I'm going to steal it.
Okay. I'll send it.
Well, it's just, I hadn't heard it.
Yeah, I haven't either. I love it.
Yeah. I promised you my last quote. This is the other one that stood out, and it goes both ways, right? So Winston Churchill, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. And so that final one with leadership is the courage to stay the course. So disciplined courage, right? If you're going to stay the course in spite of things not going, they're less than ideal, or if timelines are not realistic, to be able to step up and have the courage to say, with what we've got going, we're not going to hit that. So at least you're not the 11th hour, or you're stressing your team out because you knew back in the beginning, there's no way you could hit that. But the other part for me on this quote is courage from a leadership perspective to actually be vulnerable enough and open enough to hear other perspectives and other opinions. And not think that you as a leader have to have all the answers, and that your way is the only way. And so this one speaks on a number of levels. So I think that's the other part for me, just around power of courage. And you're right, Pam, it's got a lot of different dimensions to it and a lot of different aspects to it. So yeah, thank you. Yeah. So this has been, and do you have something else to say, Roko?
No, well, I was interested on Pam's take on that quote.
Oh, okay. No, then let's ask. So Pam, what is your thought on Winston Churchill's quote?
No, I mean, I haven't been in a leadership position, at least not a formal leadership position, but I've been an informal leader for most of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of different leaders in my career, and some of the most efficient, best, memorable leaders exhibited what Winston Churchill's quote.
Yeah.
Implies.
Yeah, I have to agree. And it's that humility, servant leadership. Yeah. And allowing the spotlight to shine on others. Yeah. So I agree. Thank you. Well, this has been fun.
Yeah.
I don't know that I ever examined courage or the power of courage the way that we did, because the first things that came to me were what it takes to be able to do something that scares you, right? But there's so much more, and it is intentionality and the discipline part of it for leadership. So Pam, what's one or two things that you'd like people to walk away with on the power of courage?
Yeah, that courage just isn't about heroicism. Like when we think of a hero, we think of, well, the superheroes, of course.
Yeah.
But we also think of, firefighters and police and all of those kind of, doctors and nurses and those types of folks. So courage comes in many shapes, forms, sizes, internally and externally. We encourage, we get encouraged. And I think that's really the takeaway here.
Thank you. How about you, Roko?
Yeah, I have two.
Okay.
One is don't go it alone. So I love Pam. Thank you for sharing. Don't go it alone. Use resources, whether it's a coach, whether it's a colleague, figure out what resources are out there to help you through it, help keep giving you the nudge or helping you to unpack what might be holding you back or what might you be thinking about stopping, because it's hard and it's not just flipping of the switch to do it. It's a process. So I love the resource piece. And then I love this deliberate part of it that you shared with us. And because it, I think back at the advice that I got from my manager way back when, and he was intentional. He helped me to see I could do it, take it in bite-sized pieces, but I was being deliberate. So, but I never really heard the term. So I love that.
Thank you. For me, it's going to go back to the other podcast, Face Your Fears and Do It Anyway. I love what you said, Pam, is that courage is not the absence of fear. And I think that's an important recognition, is that you're going to have that moment of fear and this scares the crap out of me or whatever may be going on. And then we have a choice, a decision to step into courage. And that's the deliberate part of it. And so I think at every opportunity that we start to feel that grip of fear or uncomfortable, is that we have a choice. We have a choice. So thank you.
And growth's on the other side. Sorry.
You're fine.
I loved what you said, Michelle. Growth on the other side. Wait, I just have one more. That's what I'll just keep saying, right?
And this is the podcast that never ends. So
it's no longer soundbite.
24 hours on a leadership soundbite podcast. Yeah, but Roko just kept having one more.
Just one more.
One more. All right. So I've enjoyed you too. As always, I enjoy hanging out with Roko and of course Pam. And until next time, this has been Leadership Soundbites with Roko, Michelle, and Pam. Please like, share, subscribe. And if you have a topic, let us know and we'd love to unpack it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.